Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast Special Edition Show, 2023 college football season's predictions. This podcast will be dedicated to the Big-12. I'm going to do exactly what I did in the ACC and the Big 10, go over my projected standings, then predict the winner of the Big-12 title game. Then I'll do my bold predictions throughout the conference, and I'll do some futures that I would like to give out. All right, so I have winning the conference with the record of 12-0, 9-0 in conference play, the Texas Longhorns. I think this is Texas's conference to lose. Texas is back, folks. I'm all in this year. I've been skeptical in the past, but they have hands down the most talent in the conference. They have Quinn Ewers at quarterback, but there's talk that they might go to Arch Manning if Ewers struggles. But they have a really good quarterback room. That's the beauty of Texas. But we'll see about Ewers. I personally feel that if he doesn't get hurt last year against Alabama, they win that game outright. They beat Alabama last year if he stays healthy. I think he's really good. Bijan Robinson's a big loss at running back, obviously, but I think that Kellen Robinson and Jonathan Brooks are going to be fine replacements. They have good receivers, Xavier Worthy and Jordan Whittington. Although Robinson and Worthy are going to be used on special teams too. A good tight end, Jatavion Sanders. 3 really good offensive linemen. Their pass rush is arguably the strength of this team. Veteran laden, including a transfer coming in, Trill Carter. And their secondary is awesome, filled with seniors. And special teams very reliable. This is arguably one of the best teams in all of college football. And I think this is a national championship contender in this conference. Coming in second with a record of 10-2 overall, 7-2 in conference play, the Kansas Jayhawks. Yes, Kansas is not taking a step back this season. I really think that Kansas is going to be good. Jalen Daniels is a really good senior quarterback. They have a good running back in Devin Neal, good receiver Lawrence Arnold, a good tight end in Mason Fairchild. Offensive line has some questions, but I think that they could hold it together. Their pass rush is questionable, I would say. They have a couple of good defensive backs and a couple of good linebackers. A kicker coming in, Seth Keller, is a transfer, I believe, from Memphis. And I think their 2 big losses, Lonnie Phillips and Robotzik Jr., they're big losses on each side of the ball. But I think that Kansas, their schedule breaks right, and I think that they're going to take advantage. I have in third in the conference, 9-3 overall, 6-3 in conference play, the Kansas State Wildcats. I think Kansas State can win the conference. I have a future on them to win the conference, but that doesn't mean that they're going to win the conference, as I allude to that every time I make futures when I do the portfolio segment. They have a good quarterback coming back in Will Howard, 2 good running backs in Treshaun Ward, the transfer, and DJ Giddens. A good receiver in Phillip Brooks, who's a special teamser, a good fullback at Ben Sinnott. Veteran-laden offensive line, which is going to help Will Howard in the running game. Pass rush is mediocre, and so is their secondary. I think their defense is going to be the reason why they don't win this conference. Their offense is going to be really, really good, but I don't think they can stop anybody. Felix Anduke-Uzomah, a big loss on defense. Adrian Martinez, I thought he was an overrated quarterback in college. He was a flop at Nebraska. Had moments on Kansas State last year, but I think Will Howard's better. That's all. And special teams, I like Phillip Brooks, but we'll see with their special teams. Coming in fourth in the conference, 9-3 overall, 6-3 in conference play, the Oklahoma Sooners. I think Oklahoma bounces back from its 6-6 disaster and ends up with a respectable 9-3 record. Dylan Gabriel back for his senior year. Good running game with Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk. Jaleel Farouk is a good receiver, and he's a good special teams player too. Good veteran-laden offensive line. Pass rush is pretty good. Secondary is mediocre. But my issue with Oklahoma, they did lose a lot of talent. Marvin Mims gone, Anton Harrison gone, Eric Gray gone, Braden Willis gone. So, we'll see how this group meshes. And how good Gabriel is this year. In fifth in the conference with a record of 7-5 overall, 5-4 in conference play, the BYU Cougars. Welcome to the Big 12 BYU. And I think their first year in the Big 12 will be pretty good. This was one of my favorite teams to back over the past several years, but now that they're out of independent / Mountain West, well, I kind of looked at them like a Mountain West team because they would always play the Mountain West teams or the Pac-12 teams, but now they're in the Big 12, and I think that they're a part of this loaded conference. Jaron Hall's a big loss for them offensively, but they still have the talent around. Very deep at wide receiver. Cody Epps leads the way. Hobbs Nyberg on special teams. They get a transfer running back in Aiden Robbins, a transfer tight end in Isaac Rex. Decentish offensive line, although they do lose some players on the offensive line. Pass rush, okay. Mediocre secondary, good punter, and Ryan Recco. So, yeah, we'll see about the Cougs. I think they make a bowl game. In sixth place in the conference, 7-5 overall, 5-4 in conference play, the Texas Tech Red Raiders. I think Texas Tech may sneak up on some people this year. Beren Morton's back at quarterback, Taj Brooks at running back, good receivers. They have a good fullback in Henry Teeter. Some questions on the offensive line, but a couple of good interior guys. Decent pass rush. Okay secondary. Special teams is a little bit of a question mark for me. Their big loss was Tyree Wilson on defense at the pass rush. But I do think that Tech will be decent this year. Coming in seventh in the conference, 6-6 overall, 4-5 in conference play, the UCF Knights. Welcome to the Big 12 UCF. I have them in a bowl game to begin their Big 12 era. Quarterback, a little bit of questions. RJ Harvey at running back's pretty good. Really deep at wide receiver. Offensive line has some veterans there, including a transfer and Rusty Stats. Pretty good pass rush. Questionable secondary. Kicker, Colton Boomer's pretty good. A couple big losses on the offensive line. Matt Lee, Sam Jackson. Lee obviously was a transfer. And Ryan Swoboda as well. Coming in eighth in the conference, 7-5 overall, 4-5 in conference play, the Baylor Bears. Baylor last year had a disappointing 6-7 season. They should be better, you would think. But they have some questions. A lot of transfers coming in. Blake Shapen at quarterback. Jake Roberts at tight end. Clark Barrington at guard. They have good receivers in Maneri Baldwin and Hal Presley. Their defense might be the strength of their team and more of a known than their offense at this point, and it's weird saying that. Good veteran laden group. 5 notable starters coming back. But they do lose a lot of players. Micah Mizuka goes to Florida, the guard. Craig Williams, the running back, transfer loss. Galvin Holmes on special teams loss. Connor Galvin, the lineman, loss. So, there's some big losses on this Baylor team that I don't know that they could, really recover from. Ninth in the conference, 6-6 overall, 4-5 in conference play, the Iowa State Cyclones. Iowa State has been, a darling in this conference past several years now, but I think there is a possibility that things might be going south. They went 4-8 a year ago. So you think they're going to be better. I think they will be record-wise, but we'll see. Hunter Deckers comes in at quarterback. Drell Brock's a running back. Good receiver, Jalen Noel. Offensive line has some questions. And so does their pass rush, but their secondary is outstanding. Big losses, Will McDonald on the pass rush. Lake Knowles, the wide receiver. A couple of linebackers they lose. So, yeah, a lot of questions with Iowa State in terms of the future of that school. 10th, 7-5 overall, 4-5 in conference play. The TCU Horned Frogs. TCU had a good year last year. They're 17th in the preseason. Somebody's going to have to disappoint, they always say. They went undefeated in Big 12 play. They made the semifinal. They went 13-2, so they lost in the college football playoff. And then they lost in the Big 12 title game. And then they got blown out by Georgia in the Natty. I think they're taking a step back. They lose so many guys that were a big part of that national championship, or not national championship, but national finalist team from a year ago. Max Duggan, Quentin Johnson, Alan Ali, Steve Avila, Darius Davis, Kendre Miller. These are all big losses for the team. D. Winters on defense, Travius Hodge Tomlinson, Dylan Horton. So I just don't think this team's going to be as good as they were a year ago. They have some guys coming back. Amani Bailey at the running back, Savion Williams at receiver, Jared Whiteley at tight end. Questions on the offensive line. Strength of this team is probably their secondary. Very veteran-laden. And their special teams are going to be pretty good too, I would think. Coming in 11th in the conference, 5-7 overall, 3-6 in conference play, the West Virginia Mountaineers. West Virginia, interesting team. They're sometimes a surprise in the conference, and then they get that random Saturday night game at home against whomever, and then they're probably going to have, actually, I know they do have a Saturday night home game on ABC this year against Pitt, but that is in week 3, and that's a rivalry game, and that's a reason why it's in prime time. And West Virginia, to me, is a school that always gets weird favoritism within the media and TV. And it's very weird. And they're not, they're not Alabama, obviously, but those fans really give a shit. And they're always, fair and honest about their team. So that's probably why they do get a weird, nepotism from the media and just the college football community in a way. But I'm not sure at this team this year. They can absolutely make a bowl. I mean, would I be shocked if they went 8-4? No. Would I be shocked if they were ranked at one point during the season? No. Surprised? Yes. Shocked? No. The offensive line's very good. They have a good running back, C.J. Donaldson Jr. Quarterback's a question. Deshaun Polk in special teams is good. He's a receiver. But my concern with West Virginia is on the defensive side of the ball. Their pass rush isn't very good. They have a couple of good safeties that are transfers coming in. Or no, one of them's a transfer. The other one is already on the team. And then their kicker's a transfer, Michael Hayes. A couple big losses offensively. Bryce Ford Wheaton, big loss. Reese Smith, transfer, big loss. Sam James, loss. Jordan Jefferson, the defensive tackle, he went to LSU. That's a loss. Dante Stills, loss on defense. So, a lot of big losses for the Mountaineers on their roster. 12th, 4-8 overall, 2-7 in conference play. The Houston Cougars. Houston, obviously comes over from the ACC. Questions at quarterback after Clayton Tune leaves. Matt Golden's a good receiver. Offensive line questions. And then questions on the defensive side of the ball and special teams too. And Dana Holgerson's been there for 5 years already. It's been since he left West Virginia. I wish Houston went to Morgantown this year, but I think West Virginia goes there. That would have been fun if Houston played at Morgantown. Maybe next year. All right. 13th, 4-8 overall, 2-7 in conference play. The Oklahoma State Cowboys. I think the Cowboys take a step back. I feel bad because I really like Mike Gundy, and I think he's a really good coach. They went 7-5 last year, but they lose a lot of key players. Questions at quarterback after losing Spencer Sanders to Ole Miss. Their running back room's really good. Ollie Gordon, Jade Nixon. Brendan Presley on special teams is good. They have a good fullback in Shake Schultz. Their defense has some questions, and they have a good kicker in Alex Hale. So they, I think, are in a little bit of trouble. And in the cellar, 3-9 overall, 2-7 in conference play, the Cincinnati Bearcats. I feel bad for Cincinnati. They're new to the conference, and I think that they are not going to benefit right away from being in the Big 12, and they're going to realize that the AAC last year was weak, and they went 9-3 a year ago. They have a new coach, Scott Satterfield, who is, in my opinion, a downgrade from Luke Fickell. Cincinnati will probably be good in time. I won't be surprised if they overachieve and go to a bowl this year. I haven't even seen the win totals yet, but there's a lot of key losses on Cincinnati. Tyler Scott, loss. James Tunstall, loss. Dylan O'Quinn, loss. Joe Hubert, transfer, loss. They have a lot of questions offensively, but their defense, I think, is going to be pretty good, especially their pass rush. All right, the Big 12 championship game, I have the Kansas Jayhawks against the Texas Longhorns. Good quarterback battle between Jalen Daniels and either Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning. And from top to bottom, I just think the Longhorns have more talent. I think that Steve Sarkisian is finally going to come into his own. Lance Leipold is an excellent coach, for sure, and he got a lot out of the Jayhawks last year, and I think he'll continue to do so down the road, and they obviously nailed that hire. But I just think Texas has more talent, so I'm going to go with Texas over Kansas to win the Big 12 championship game. All right, so bold predictions for the conference. All right, number one, I just mentioned Lance Leipold. I think he leaves Kansas and goes to another job. I don't know where that is. There's going to be big schools that underachieve and try to go elsewhere. Jim Harbaugh and Michigan are having problems. That's no secret. There's been rumors about Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan for a couple of years now to go to the NFL. What if Jim Harbaugh leaves Michigan and goes back to coaching the NFL? Maybe, I don't know, Robert Saleh, Jets underachieve. They fire Robert Saleh. He goes to the Jets. What if Bill decides, hey, I'm going to hang it up. Jim goes and coaches New England. What if Jerry Jones is sick and tired of Mike McCarthy? He could go coach the Cowboys. What if Andy Reid decides that he's going to retire? What if Justin Herbert intrigues Jim Harbaugh and Brandon Staley gets fired because the Chargers underachieved yet again? So, Lance Leipold to Michigan. There you go. Bold prediction. All right, another coach that I think is not going to be with their team next year is Neil Brown at West Virginia. He probably should have been fired last year, and obviously that school is a mess right now with the Bob Huggins situation, and you know that the new people, the AD and such, did not hire Neil Brown, so I think Neil Brown's fired, and I think that Neil Brown has to have a monster season, like how I think it would have to take a monster season for him to return. They would have to go 8-4 for him to come back. 7-5 won't cut it in Morgantown. It just won't. 8-4, 9-3, I think he's back. I just don't see West Virginia, and at that tough of a conference, winning more than 7 games. So I think Neil Brown's out, and they're probably going to try to find an up-and-coming coach to coach the Mountaineers. And one name that stands out to me is Jeff Taylor at UTSA. I think UTSA is going to be awesome this year. And it's going to be like a Luke Fickell situation where a Power 5 school is going to pry him away. I think Jeff Taylor would be really, really good at West Virginia. There's a couple other guys that stand out, maybe a couple of coordinators that could jump out and whatnot, but Jeff Taylor stands out to me in a big way. And then the third prediction of the Big 12 is that the conference will add Stanford and they'll add Washington State. I just think that, I know there's a meeting probably going on right now as we speak about Stanford going to the ACC, but there's rumors about Stanford to the Big 12 too, and I think that at some point, and I wouldn't be shocked if it's before this podcast gets posted, that Stanford, it'll be announced that them and Wazoo will be joining the Big 12 in 2024. But if not Stanford and Wazoo, I'm going to say it is maybe Wazoo and Memphis going to the Big 12. Because Memphis was in the talks with the Big 12, but they ended up staying in the Americans. So Memphis and Wazoo, if not Stanford, then Memphis from the American goes to the Big 12. So there you go. All right, futures for the Big 12. So the Big 12 one took a little longer because I want to talk about some subplots and whatnot of my predictions and my clever Harbaugh prediction that I had. All right, so win totals for the Big 12. Baylor, 7.5. I have them at 7, so that's a pass. BYU's 4.5. Oh my God. That's so low. That is so low. And the over's very, very juiced. I would parlay that with something else in a different conference. Cincinnati's 4.5. That is pretty low. I have them at 3, so I like the under 4.5 for Cincinnati at plus 112. Houston's also 4.5. I have them at 4, so that's a pass. Iowa State's at 4.5. That's low. I'll go over 4.5 on Iowa State any day of the week. Kansas is 6.5. Oh my God, that is so low. Over 6.5 plus 116. Love it. Kansas State's over under 7.5. Over's minus 180. That's pretty juicy, but I'd take it. Oklahoma's 9.5. I'll pass. Oklahoma State is 6.5. I'll take the under all day, every day. TCU is 7.5. That sounds about right. I'd pass. I thought TCU's was going to be juiced higher because of them being in the Natty last year, so Vegas knows. Texas is 9.5. Overs minus 140. Unders plus 114. I would parlay that over with somebody else. Texas Tech is 7.5. I'd pass. UCF is 6.5. I'd pass too. West Virginia's 5.5. I would pass on that as well. That's pretty much betting on them to make a bowl. So I'm pretty much on target with the Big 12, but the only one that is really, really low to me is Kansas. So if I had to bet on one of these, and the one I'll give out is over 6.5 for Kansas wins at plus 116. Absolutely love the pick. All right, the Big 12 conference odds. Texas is even money. Oklahoma's plus 420. Kansas State's 5-1. I already have a future on that. Tech's 11-1. Baylor's 19-1. TCU 21. UCF, Oklahoma State, and Kansas are each 30. West Virginia 70. Cincy and Iowa State are 95. BYU's 100. Houston's 120. Kansas 30-1, of course. I have them in the Big 12 title game, so why not take a flyer on them? I already have one on Kansas State. Oklahoma's overvalued. BYU at 100-1 is intriguing, but they have quarterback questions. But if I had to give out a value pick for somebody to win the Big 12 championship, it's Kansas at 30-1. And there's no divisions in the Big 12, so we don't have to do that. So there you have it for the 2023 Big 12 portion of the season predictions podcast. Next up is the Pac-12.